UFC 324 was an absolute banger, man. We're going to go ahead and talk about, recap UFC 324. And if y'all stick around, I'm going to give y'all the fights to make, okay? The fights that Dana White, myself, Hunter Campbell, the true matchmakers of the UFC should be making next, okay, guys? Without further ado, let's go ahead and start it off by talking about Gaethje versus Pimblett, okay? We're not going to talk about every fight on this card. I just want to quickly, give my reaction. Some of y'all have already seen it, but what was this fight? First of all, this was a banger. Highly, highly, highly entertaining fight. But what was Paddy Pimblett doing? Okay. And yes, I'm not trying to cope because, yes, I did pick Paddy Pimblett. I know I'm not the only one that did so, but maybe I'm crazy. But I was under the impression that, Paddy Pimblett, one of the best grapplers in the division, might, just maybe, might try to use and implement his grappling in his game plan against one of the best strikers in the division, who also has been choked out in multiple different title fights. But no, maybe I'm crazy. Like I said, Paddy Pimblett, I know on paper it says shot 5 takedowns. We're talking about in rounds 4 and 5 when I really saw him commit to a takedown after he was busted up, bloody, sweaty, and exhausted. What was this game plan? And I do think Paddy Pimblett is a great fighter. I think that he still could beat Justin Gaethje if he had the right game plan. But this game plan was awful. And you know what? I don't even think this was on the coaches. I heard the corner cam. I heard the coaches yelling at Paddy Pimblett to go for a takedown, shoot the takedown. You got to get this fight to the ground, Paddy. But he did not. He did not want any part of that. He wanted to scrap with the scrapper himself, Justin Gaethje. You want to trade, exchange with Justin Gaethje. Look, I'm going to be honest, Paddy Pimblett impressed me, but the only thing that impressed me was his chin, was the durability. And we've heard it. Paddy Pimblett himself says he cannot be knocked out. Maybe he was not lying, okay? But to go out there and try to knock out Justin Gaethje is crazy, okay? Yes, I did pick Paddy Pimblett. If you would have told me that he was going to go out there with the game plan with the intention of knocking out Justin Gaethje, in no world would I have picked Paddy Pimblett, okay? He had some moments, he was landing a nice jab, he landed some great leg kicks as well. But outside of that, we already know. We've known. Okay, we've known Paddy Pimblett is not this elite striker. He's not even close. I said this in my prediction video. Justin Gaethje is miles ahead of Paddy Pimblett on the feet, okay? Paddy Pimblett beats one ranked contender. He gets a TKO over Michael Chandler and thinks he can knock out anybody, bro. Let's be realistic, okay? However, don't want to discredit anything from Justin Gaethje. Great game plan. Gaethje implemented more wrestling than Paddy did, which was pretty cool to see. Gaethje never likes to use his wrestling, but Gaethje was landing some bombs, and I mean bombs in this fight, okay? I thought Paddy Pimblett, looking at the end of round 1 and at the end of round 2, specifically, I thought Gaethje was gonna get him out of there. I thought Gaethje was gonna knock out Paddy Pimblett. Paddy starts building momentum in round 3. We're in for a treat, in for a banger fight, and then Gaethje swings the momentum right back his way, man. This was a crazy fight, bro. Looking at the last 10 seconds or so of the fight, it pretty much summed up the whole thing, okay? Two acoustic fighters just going all out, okay? Just throwing some sloppy strikes. I get it. The exhaustion has worn in at that point, but this was a really, really fun fight. A great way to kick off the Paramount Plus event and Paramount Plus deal in general. This is how you get fans to the sport, bro. This is exactly how you bring new fans to the sport. And I don't know if that was in Paddy Pimblett's mind, trying to not fall into the category of these boring grapplers. I don't know. I still think he had a horrible game plan though. But shout out to Justin Gaethje, man. You're Ilya Toporia's next victim. Okay, moving on. Sean O'Malley back in the win column. Great. I think he looked really good. Some people are really trying to say Song Yadong won this fight, and I get it. It was a very close and competitive fight. I think Song Yadong won round 2. And if you look at and Sean O'Malley clearly won round 3, but if you look at round 1, Sean O'Malley was very clearly winning the round, right? And then Song Yadong lands a takedown with 20 seconds left or so, and does nothing with it. O'Malley even jumped on a guillotine, I believe. But Are we really scoring that? Are people really trying to say that that one takedown with 20 seconds remaining, landing 0 shots, should have swayed the whole round in Song Yadong's favor? Absolutely not. Okay, Sean O'Malley. Let's look at the stats. I actually don't know what the stats say, but it feels like Song didn't land anything. Apparently, on the stats, Song Yadong landed one more strike. O'Malley had the edge in significant strikes, which that's right. That's right. O'Malley was busting him up. You could have seen their faces at the end. O'Malley didn't have a scratch on him. Song Yadong was busted up. Okay. Sean O'Malley rightfully won the fight. We're going to talk about what his future holds in our later on in the video. Okay. Where's Waldo beats Derek Lewis? No surprise here. I did pick Derek Lewis based on vibes. Everything I said in my breakdown was that Waldo Cortez should absolutely win this fight, but Derek Lewis fights are impossible to predict. There's no reason to really break them down. So let's go with Derek Lewis by fluke KO. Okay. Whatever. We had a women's fight on the main card. Should have been Umar versus Figgy, but now that I saw how Umar versus Figgy played out, it's okay. That fight was pretty boring. Okay. Arnold Allen versus John Silva. Another absolute banger. Acoustic versus acoustic. John Silva straight up jumped on this man's back. And I'm not talking about jumped on the back looking for a choke, like literally jumped on his back with his feet. Rode him like a surfboard, bro. No diddy, okay? John Silva looked phenomenal. Arnold Allen looked great as well. We're looking at round one. Arnold Allen's tagging up John Silva, landing some beautiful combos. I think he won round one even. And then John Silva starts to take over rounds 2 and 3. You can tell he just has more power on his shots than Arnold Allen. The speed was pretty similar, like we predicted, but an all around banger fight, man. We'll talk about John Silva's future as well. And Umar gets the decision over Figgy, and that's what we expected. We expected Umar to win this fight, but Figueiredo did nothing. He didn't do a single thing in this fight. I don't think bro really wanted to win this fight. I don't know. Maybe the Dagestani wrestling is that OP that it just throws you off your game plan entirely and just makes you so cautious. But shout out to Umar, man. Let's talk about what fight should be booked next. Let's go ahead and get into it, man. The fights to make after the great event of UFC 324. We're not going to talk about every single fighter on this card, just a select few, maybe 6 or 7. All right, never mind. Just get into the video, man. Just go ahead and move on to the next slide, okay? Starting off with the interim champion, Justin Gaethje, okay? There's only one option. There's only one option as of right now, and that is to fight Ilia Topuria. Gaethje's the interim champion. Topuria is the undisputed champion, okay? That is what you do. Don't look at Tom Aspinall and John Jones. The standard, what should happen, and there should be no excuses, is that the interim champion fights the undisputed champion. If the undisputed champion doesn't want to fight the interim champion, you vacate your belt. But this case is a little bit different because Ilia Topuria is out of action right now, okay? But he plans on coming back. He said he wants to come back between April or June. This is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. Unless Ilia Topuria changes his mind and really wants to go up to 170 and fight Islam, which I would be okay with, Justin Gaethje versus Topuria is the fight to make, and probably for the White House. Maybe even the main event of the UFC White House event. I mean, this is a no-brainer. Like I said, interim champion versus undisputed champion. I was hoping this would be Paddy Pimblett. Not because I don't like Gaethje. I love Gaethje. But Paddy versus Ilia would have been so sick. The hype would have been crazy. The build-up would have been crazy. The bad blood would have been crazy. However, Paddy's not ready. Watching him fight Justin Gaethje, I realized he's not ready. And like I said, I still think he could have beat Justin Gaethje, but the game plan like that, if you would have come in there and tried to fight Ilia with that same game plan, oh my gosh, Paddy would still be in the hospital to this day. Okay, that's all I gotta say. Gaethje's not beating Topuria either. It was really just a fight. It wasn't even an interim championship. It was a fight to see who gets chinned by Topuria. And Paddy unfortunately lost. So Justin Gaethje fans, I'm sorry, but everybody that wanted him to beat Paddy Pimblett, everybody that's been begging this man to get a title shot, here you go. Are you going to be happy? Are you going to be happy when the last visual, the last sight that you see of the highlight is him getting put on a highlight, getting knocked out cold into a coma by Ilia Topuria? I don't think y'all want that, okay? But Gaethje versus Topuria probably will happen. I'm guessing it will happen at the White House. Let's go ahead and move on, okay? Paddy Pimblett, the loser of the main event. Now, hear me out, okay? Hear me out. In no way, shape, or form should the UFC be awarding guys like Paddy Pimblett, who, first of all, didn't really deserve to be there anyway, but who fought the number 4 contender in Justin Gaethje and lost. In no way, shape, or form should he be jumping up to fight the number 2 contender after that loss, okay? However, we got to think about the UFC's perspective, the fact that they are an entertainment business, and the fact that Arman Tsarukyan is not getting the title shot, even though he is the number 2 contender, okay? So Paddy Pimblett, yes, he lost to Justin Gaethje. The only other option that I really liked for Paddy Pimblett would be Dan Hooker, who's scheduled to fight this weekend. The timeline could have matched up. That's a great fight too. But when you look at Arman Tsarukyan, who is he going to fight? Okay, he's not fighting Justin Gaethje because, like I said, Justin Gaethje and Topuria are going to fight probably in the summer. So is Arman Tsarukyan going to sit around, inactive until the end of 2026 or maybe even early 2027? I don't want that. I really don't want that. And this one works because Paddy Pimblett and Nurmagomedov Tsarukyan have a beef that is very, very bad-blooded. This would sell a lot. This could be a co-main event on a pay-per-view, and people would buy it up for the co-main event, okay? This is one of those bad-blooded affairs that might get ugly at the press conference. It's going to get a lot of eyes on it, man. Arman Tsarukyan also is like, he's not becoming a superstar whatsoever, but he's coming a bigger name because he's been on Aiden Ross. He's been on Neon streams. He's kind of putting himself out there. He's promoting himself, something that the UFC doesn't do for him. But Paddy versus Arman Tsarukyan is an intriguing matchup, grappler versus grappler. This is one of those fights where if Paddy has an awful game plan and just wants to knock out Arman, it's not nearly as bad as Gaethje. Okay? I don't know who would win this fight. Actually, I probably do. Arman Tsarukyan probably would beat up the Scouser, but it would be very, very entertaining. I'm telling you, this fight makes sense due to the fact that the UFC is not going to give Arman Tsarukyan a title shot. Okay? That's basically it. They have the beef. Let's run it. Okay? Because in this position in particular, you can tell Arman Tsarukyan, if I'm Dana White, I'm telling Arman, if you fight Paddy Pimblett in a 5-round co-main event, maybe even a fight night main event on some big event, but if you take this fight with Paddy Pimblett and you win, you are guaranteed the next title fight. How do you say no to that? He gets to A, beat up somebody who he hates, and B, get the title shot after. Sounds good for him, right? For Paddy Pimblett, you're not going to guarantee him a title fight if he beats Arman, but the UFC knows what they're doing. Paddy Pimblett is a big star. It puts him in a very good situation if he does beat Arman, okay? Because if you look in the lightweight division, you also have another big fight with big implications in Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira, which I believe is going down in March. Okay? So we're going to fast forward a little bit. I understand a lot of different things can happen in the meantime. But let's just say Ilya Topuria beats Justin Gaethje, which he will do if they fight. And Paddy beats Arman Tsarukyan. Paddy Pimblett might still be fighting Ilya Topuria after one win because they have the history, because they have the bad blood, because they have the beef. Okay? On the other hand, if Arman Tsarukyan beats Paddy, Arman Tsarukyan finally gets his title shot, right? Against Ilya, who another fighter they kind of have beef with. Okay, but if you look at Max versus Charles, those are two fighters that Ilya Topuria has already knocked out. So, what I'm trying to say is if Paddy Pimblett beats Arman Tsarukyan, there's a good chance that he jumps Max or Charles. More so the chance that he jumps Charles than Max because Max is on a crazy run at 155. It would be a different fight and a lot bigger fight. But y'all get what I'm saying. Let's just run this fight. Let's go ahead and move on. Enough on Paddy and Arman. But Sugar Sean O'Malley, bro, listen, this is also, I don't know if it's a hot take, but it's kind of questionable. Sean O'Malley is going to be fighting Petr Yan. That's what I think. That is genuinely what I think the UFC is going to do. Is it what I think the UFC should do? Not necessarily, because I think you should give Merab his immediate title rematch. But the UFC has a White House event coming up, okay? On the White House lawn, they want American fighters, and I promise you, they want American fighters to fight at the White House. Sean O'Malley's in good position right now. Not because he's on a crazy win streak, he's on a one-fight win streak. Okay? But, big but, okay? Sean O'Malley has a win on paper over Piotr Jan, the current champion. Now, if you flash back to O'Malley versus Chito Vera, they gave Chito Vera a title fight against O'Malley. Why? Because he was on some crazy win streak? No. But because he had a win on paper over Sean O'Malley. Y'all picking up what I'm putting down? This one's even crazier because, like I said, going back to the White House, they want American fighters on the White House card. Jan's a Russian champion against an American contender, Sean O'Malley. It's a win-win for the UFC because you have an American potentially become a champion at the White House, and you also have one of your bigger stars potentially becoming champion again, okay? I can get behind this fight because the first fight was so very entertaining. We get to see the rematch in a 5-rounder this time. I could get behind that, okay? And if they happen to do that, then the UFC has to do this too. Okay, Umar Nurmagomedov, the number 2 contender, against Merab Dvalishvili, the number 1 contender. Okay? Again, let me clarify. I think that Merab deserves a title rematch against Piotr Jan. But I feel like the UFC is going to go this route, okay? If they don't let Merab fight Jan immediately, there's only one other fight for Merab, and that is the Umar rematch. Okay, this fight was an absolute banger. In my personal opinion, one of the best fights of 2025. They have some beef as well. You can sell this fight. This is a phenomenal, it has to be a 5-round fight, a phenomenal 5-round co-main event that will get people interested. And you don't have to worry about it being boring because they're 2 grapplers, bro. Their first fight was amazing, okay? Umar versus Merab is the fight to make if this is the fight or the direction the UFC wants to go with O'Malley, and I have a feeling they will. All right, let's go ahead and move on. We got 2 more, I believe. We'll go ahead and talk through this one really quickly. Where's Waldo Cortez? Ended up beating Derek Lewis. Again, no surprise there, but he did so. Waldo's actually pretty good for the heavyweight division, but I think there's only one fight you book for Waldo, and that is against Alexander Volkov, okay? It looks like Tom Aspinall's still trying to recover. Hopefully he does, he gets well. He can get back in the octagon ASAP. But once he does, he's probably going to be fighting Tsarukyan. Volkov is the next person in line for that title, so let's not keep everybody in the heavyweight division inactive, but let's do a real number 1 contendership fight. Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Alexander Volkov. As simple as that. You can throw this on a main card. You can throw this on a fight night. It doesn't matter. People aren't going to be super intrigued for this fight. People don't get super intrigued for the heavyweight division anymore anyway, but especially for a blob. You know what? I'm not going to call them blobs. They're actually two very skilled fighters in the heavyweight division. But you get what I'm saying. You get my point. People don't care. People don't care about Waldo versus Volkov, but it is a necessary fight. Let's go ahead and wrap it up with the final fight that we have booked. Casual Take MMA and Dana White. We cooked it up ourselves. And this is John Silva versus Movsar Evloev. Okay, another interesting matchup, which you can kind of argue whether or not John Silva deserves to get jumped up and fight the number 1 contender. And you can also make the argument that Movsar Evloev should be next for the title, which I personally 100% agree with. He should have already fought Volk for the title. But Volk's fighting Diego this weekend. Okay? If you book John Silva versus Movsar, we know the UFC does not want Movsar Evloev to fight for the belt next because he already would have fought for the belt. And let me remind you, this man Movsar has now not competed in the UFC since 2024, and we're now in 2026. So, if you thought he was, or if you didn't think he was going to get the title shot or didn't think he deserved it, then why would he deserve it now? John Silva versus Evloev, make it a number 1 contendership fight. Okay. Right now we got Diego Volk. Maybe the winner of that can fight Lerone Murphy in the meantime. I thought about Silva versus Murphy, but they would rather give Murphy a title fight than Evloev. So, I think you run Silva versus Evloev, April, May, somewhere in that time frame. And maybe the winner of this does fight the winner of Diego and Volk, or maybe not. John Silva might be the most entertaining fighter in the featherweight division. We saw Silva versus Lopez, phenomenal fight. I think the UFC would love to run that one back, okay? If Lopez does beat Volk, he can either get the rematch with Silva, which was one of the best fights ever, one of the greatest 2-round fights ever, or he can try to get his revenge against Movsar Evloev. They also have history, okay? On the other hand, Volkanovski wants to fight Evloev. If Evloev wins this, Volk versus Evloev is the fight. If not, John Silva, who's not a star, but he's making a name for himself in the featherweight division. If he beats Movsar, the UFC is fine throwing him a title fight. That's what I think. The featherweight division is very, very interesting right now because Volk versus Lopez was the last title fight. And a year later, it's the title fight again. So, yeah, you also have Yair Rodriguez, who's the number 3 contender in there. I thought of matching up with John Silva, but that would really just be to get him killed because Yair also doesn't deserve a title fight, doesn't really deserve to be the number 3 contender right now either. He fights once a year as well. But there's a chance that if Lopez wins, you can do Yair versus Lopez because they have that beef there. So in the meantime, you run Silva versus Evloev. Lerone Murphy, maybe he fights the winner. I don't know, man. It's very confusing at 45. But anyway, guys, these are my official fights to make after UFC 324. Let me know in the comments what you agree with, what you disagree with. Let me know what fights y'all want to see. And click the like button if you enjoyed, guys. Turn the post notifications on so you don't miss a live stream, okay? We're live every Tuesday and Thursday night, 8:30 Eastern time, okay? Y'all don't want to miss out. I appreciate you guys once again, and we out.